Yo, what's going on, guys? And today we're going to be talking about the report that Brian Windhorst put out that the Atlanta Hawks are interested in Brandon Ingram. And I think it's going to be quite interesting if they were to land Brandon Ingram. And my question is this whole Brandon Ingram idea that Brian Windhorst floating out for Clint Capella, because both teams have expiring contracts, and Brandon Ingram and Clint Capella. Clint Capella obviously makes like $14 million short, but they can easily fill that in with salary. And this is a team that already did business once before between DeJounte Murray and Larry Nance, Dyson Daniels. So let's talk real quick. What would a Brandon Ingram Atlanta Hawks trade look like? Let me hear your thoughts down below. Go check out Brian Windhorst and ESPN's reporting on this. Let's go. So this is what Brian Windhorst specified when they were speaking about the Atlanta Hawks allegedly being interested in Brandon Ingram, which I actually like, especially with Jalen Johnson going out, with obviously the torn labrum. And this was what they floated. So the Atlanta Hawks allegedly could pursue a trade for Brandon Ingram after Jalen Johnson was ruled out for the season. And that is because Atlanta is attempting to make the playoffs this season, as they owe their first round pick outright to the San Antonio Spurs. They're currently in the 9th place seeding for the Eastern Conference. The quote goes like this. Quote, Brandon Ingram's a guy who's been on the trade block for months, but with these last few days, in addition to Zach LaVine's some case, they've been on the trade block. I'm seeing a little bit of a warm-up out there in some talks involving those two players. Specifically, keep an eye on the Atlanta Hawks. They've just lost Jalen Johnson for the season, and they might start to get interested in making a move, especially for Brandon Ingram. Keep an eye out on that. End quote. Brian Windhorst said. Ingram's on a $36 million expiring contract, which could allow him effectively to be a rental player that at least allows a team like the Pelicans maybe not get draft picks, but at least players that can compensate them for the loss of him, while the Hawks don't have to handicap themselves into having Brandon Ingram be a long-term salary they're stuck with, and they can just move along next offseason as he can just walk, or they can help facilitate a sign and trade so he can get to the place that they want, and then they can get even more compensation, as he is someone who can come in and step in. Jalen Johnson was obviously averaging like almost 20 and 10. Brandon Ingram's a bit different player, but they can play the same position, especially that they have Zachary Risachet and DeAndre Hunter on this team, and Bogdan Bogdanovic. And you would assume that this deal might just be Clint Capella, Bogdan Bogdanovic for, I would assume personally, if you just look at what the salaries for the Pelicans are, you're making $36 million with Brandon Ingram. I would just say, hey, would you just mind then throwing in Javonte Green and Daniel Tice right there? That's 4.2, brings you to $40 million. Clint Capella's making like 22. Bogdan's making, I believe, 18. We'll pull it up right here to get confirmed those numbers. So Bogdan's making 17.2. Clint's making 22.2. So if you put those together, that brings you 525,000. That's 39,525,000 dollars between Clint Capella and Bogdan Bogdanovic. And if you did Brandon Ingram and Daniel Tice and Javonte Green, that right there is 5.225,000 plus Brandon Ingram's 36 brings you to 41. Yeah, right there. You save $2 million and you only need to get $1.5 million. So you even get below the luxury tax by doing that deal if you're the Pelicans. Yeah, because the Pelicans are only bringing in $39 million and they're sending out they're receiving 39.5 and they're sending out $41 million and 225. So that basically means they save, quick math, $1.7 million, and they only needed to save 1.5. So they get under the luxury cap by $200,000 Wow, shout out there. Let's do it. Clint Capella, Bogdanovich, come to New Orleans, send Brandon Ingram as a rental, send him some help in the front court with Daniel Tice, as well as Javonte Green to give him a perimeter attack hustle guy. Love it. Love it. They could have even expanded and sent Javonte somewhere else if they wanted to. Then just to expand this further, I don't know what's going on with Larry Nance because we've heard that they really valued him. And at the beginning of the season, he looked like he was a fit. Then he got hurt, came back, then left. And it's been weird. Does anybody have an update with the Larry Nance situation? As I'm very, very curious. Do they want to keep him, or could we just expand this trade and see if we get a third team? We see if a guy like Larry Nance is going to be available. Because I know he's playing again, but I swear he comes back, plays one game, misses a game, and then they play him back to back now. Are they holding him out of, I know it was 4 games in 5 days. So they basically made him play 3 games in 5 days. That really could be it. And they're just easing him back. He's a great fit for this team, for the Hawks. Now, outside of that, what do I think about the entire deal if the Hawks were to do something like that? I think the biggest thing with Brandon Ingram is he's a bit ball dominant. Like, though I would love if Brandon Ingram had fallen into, or I guess you would say fulfilled, the KD comparisons when he came into the NBA. Has he been, developed into the all-star that we all hope that he would be? Yes, of course. I think the biggest thing with Brandon Ingram is that he was supposed to be like a volume, sharp shooting, catch and shoot guy. And not that he isn't, like he can shoot it. He's good off the catch and shoot, but he likes to have the rock in his hand. And he's a lot more of an on-ball guy who operates sometimes as a point forward, which why the Jalen Johnson rental would work out well, because he can step into that role of having an on-ball guy who kickstart transitions. The difference is Jalen Johnson would go on ball and like ball handle, playmake as a secondary playmaker for Trey, and run some of the offense. While Brandon Ingram, yes, he does that. I think it's the difference is his is a lot more isolation, and his passing, not always, but some of the times when he does get the assist, it's because he drives or he does something, shot clock winds down, and he doesn't have an open shot, so he quickly finds the open man, or he sees the guy who's cutting, and that's how he gets his assist. Rather than where I feel like Jalen Johnson doesn't chew the clock the same way that Brandon Ingram does. Maybe that's just me now being just picking and being kind of, I guess, a snob about like play styles. I think Quinn Snyder can work it. Plus, I do believe the idea of Richiche, DeAndre Hunter, and Brandon Ingram then being wings by committee, and you still have Garrison Matthews, of course, would just maybe alleviate that. And it will only be a rental, and you'd hope that you tell Brandon, hey, instead of you being a straight up unrestricted free agent, we can sign and trade you. We'll take back half of your salary from a contending team. That way, a contending team who doesn't have the money to trade for you or sign you outright can trade for you, and we'll take it. And that way they can double dip, not only get maybe whatever other players, like how we said, Javonte Green, Daniel Tice, as additional roster depth just for the season or rental pieces. And if we really like them, we can resign them, or they can just walk. But you get to be turned into further assets. Let me hear your thoughts.